Everyone knows about Lavender Town, but Pokemon has far more disturbing secrets hiding in plain sight. In the spirit of Halloween, a special guest and I will be covering 4 topics of the more eerie bits of lore in the Pokemon world, with timestamps in the description for each individual topic. With that out of the way, let's get started. Pokedex entry 47, Parasect. Details of a Pokemon, barely alive and controlled solely by a large mushroom growth on its back, grown beyond its initial evolution. Entry 46, Paris. With soulless blank white eyes, officials advise to avoid this Pokemon at all costs, as spores can release from the dorsal side of its body. I truly fear for anyone who has to encounter such a creature. Stories circulate of eager Team Rocket grunts venturing into Mount Moon, hoping to capture these creatures for a hefty bonus from their mysterious boss. Instead, they find themselves overwhelmed by Parasect's powerful spores and vicious pincer attacks. The few who manage to escape barely live to tell the tale, serving as a grim warning to anyone foolish enough to underestimate a Pokemon that's already been dead inside. Paris and Parasect are based on cicada nymphs, the early underground stage of cicadas. However, Paris shows a crucial difference from normal cicada nymphs, a pair of small mushrooms growing on its back, steadily draining its life and nutrients throughout its development. These mushrooms are known as tochukatsu in Japanese, or more commonly as caterpillar fungus or cordyceps mushroom. This real-world fungus is notorious for controlling the behavior of its host. The mushrooms attach to Paris early in its development, slowly seizing control while the Pokemon is still in its juvenile state. Although the mushrooms can theoretically be removed, their influence remains evident as they direct Paris to harvest nutrients from tree roots. Over time, as Paris loses more control during its development, the small mushrooms merge into one large central mass. Its eyes turn completely white as Paris loses all sense of thought, feeling, and autonomy, transforming into Parasect. Rather than developing into a full cicada as nature intended, Paris remains trapped in its nymph-like state, now serving merely as a vessel for the parasitic mushroom. Parasect roams damp caves, forests, and swamps, feeding on trees to sustain its parasitic host. It mindlessly attacks anyone who threatens the large mushroom on its back, and eventually spreads spores across the Pokemon world to continue its cycle. The inspiration behind this evolutionary line extends far beyond the games, drawing from disturbing real-world biology. Cordyceps fungi actually do grow out of hosts and control their behavior, primarily targeting small insect species with the ultimate goal of releasing spores over a wider area. Many Parasect Pokedex entries mention its tendency to climb trees, directly mirroring how cordyceps-infected insects are compelled to climb to higher positions before the fungus releases spores into the forests below. Parasect's signature move was Spore in the first 2 generations of Pokemon, an evident influence from the real-world cordyceps. Even the details that Paris and Parasect's mushrooms are harvested for medicine reflects real-world cordyceps usage in traditional medicine. If a trainer attempts to remove the mushroom from Parasect's back, or even if a Team Rocket grunt tries to harvest it for profit, Parasect will immediately cease to function. Without its parasitic controller, it becomes nothing more than a lifeless husk, finally free from the fungus's grip, but at the ultimate cost. The good news for anyone brave or foolish enough to attempt this is that Parasect's spores cannot control humans. However, I wouldn't try recommending to tangle with such a hostile Pokemon, unless you come extremely well prepared. But there's something far more sinister than a mind-controlling fungus lurking in the Pokemon world. What if I told you there was a Pokemon born from the fusion of human DNA and an ancient legendary Pokemon? How one man's desperation led to the creation of one of the most powerful and tragic Pokemon ever conceived. In the first Pokemon movie, a man known as Dr. Fuji is introduced in the movie. Dr. Fuji, during the events of the Pokemon movie, was an expert on Pokemon DNA and human DNA as well. This expertise rose due to the death of his daughter, Amber, and his obsession with wanting to bring her back to life. Dr. Fuji worked tirelessly to successfully clone his daughter into a new body. During these attempts in order to secure funding, Giovanni of Team Rocket reached out to Dr. Fuji to ask for the creation of the ultimate Pokemon, one of great power and psychic ability. Its template, the ancient Pokemon Mew, a Pokemon Giovanni wished to recreate from fossilized samples collected by Team Rocket. In the experimentation of Dr. Fuji to clone both his daughter and Mew, something unexpected happened. The clones developed consciousness before their bodies were complete, existing in a digital space where they could communicate with each other. Amber's clone, along with the clones of the Pokemon Charmander, Squirtle, and Bulbasaur, formed a bond with the developing Mewtwo clone in this liminal space between life and death. This is where it takes a tragic turn. Amber's clone begins to disappear, her energy fading as technology struggles to sustain a human consciousness. In her final moments, she explains the concept of life and death to Mewtwo, telling him not to be sad because they'll always be together in his memories. This moment, this connection with a human soul, becomes imprinted on Mewtwo's psyche before he was ever fully born. But that subconscious connection, that fragment of human emotion and consciousness, remains buried deep within him. Dr. Fuji's desperate attempt to bring back his daughter inadvertently created something more unprecedented. A Pokemon infused with human DNA, human emotions, and human existential questions. It's not just his immense psychic powers, or the fact that he was artificially created. It's that he carries within him the soul fragments of a little girl who taught him about life, death, and memory. He's a Pokemon grappling with the fundamental human question. Who am I? Why was I created? What is my purpose? After Mewtwo awakens and destroys the laboratory in his confusion and rage, Dr. Fuji perishes in the destruction, killed by the very creation that carried the last remnants of his beloved daughter. His obsession to bring back Amber ultimately costed his own life, and left Mewtwo alone to wrestle with an identity crisis no Pokemon was ever meant to experience. His anger, his confusion about his existence, his complicated relationship with humanity, it all stems from being born with a human conscious intertwined with Pokemon DNA. Giovanni saw him as a weapon. Dr. Fuji saw him as a means to an end. But Mewtwo himself? He's something that was never supposed to exist. A being caught between two worlds, carrying the ghost of a human child within his genetic code, searching for meaning in a life that began as someone else's desperate attempt to defy death. In the spirit of Halloween, my spooky friend Vannpyre will be covering the next segment of this video, uncovering the hidden horrors behind Hoenn's most prestigious company.
Hello, my name is Vannpyre, and I'm so honored to have been invited and considered as a scary source. Today, I'll be covering the Devon Corporation and the ties to Team Flare and the ultimate weapon. Devon Corporation, a company we are introduced to in the Hoenn region, or Ruby and Sapphire rather, a company well known for their inventions including a certain Devon scope. But with all these inventions, what exactly is helping to power this innovation? Well, the energy and power of Pokemon. In the Delta episode for the remakes of Ruby and Sapphire, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, we have a conversation with Steven's grandfather, who previously owned the company, and how he was inspired by the infinity energy that was used during the Great Pokemon Wars. Let me first take us back 3,000 years to the days when the story began. There was a great war at that time, in a region far from here. That war was finally brought to an end by a weapon created by one man, and what energy source could power such a dreadful weapon, do you know? You see, it ran on the life energy of Pokemon, the energy that could be gained by the sacrifice of so many Pokemon. There are surely many Pokemon who would call it reprehensible, but my grandfather, the president of Devon before me, said this: couldn't we use the energy to improve the lives of people and Pokemon? And so, he developed our greatest creation here at the Devon Corporation, Infinity Energy. Thanks to Infinity Energy, Devon was able to become one of the top industries in Hoenn and developed into the giant you see today. To which, in the Delta episode, they're literally trying to stop a meteor and move it using Infinity Energy, a power energy that, as mentioned, runs on the life energy of Pokemon. Zinnia, the mysterious Draconian woman we meet in the Delta episode, then responds with, "I know all about it." About just what kind of energy you're trying to use to fuel this rocket thing. The abominable technology humanity first thought up 3,000 years ago, so you're once again planning to claim that this is best for humanity, or best for the whole darn world, and to snap your fingers to repeat the sins of the past. Worse, if what I overheard is true, this time you're about to commit an error more abominable than before. Jumping sources here, if we go to the manga Pokemon Adventures, in their Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire arc, Steven drains the life force of Sapphire's Blaziken and Emerald Sceptile in their Mega Evolved states to move the meteor. Not only is it a very painful process to Mega Evolve, but also the fact that it is described as painful for the energy to be taken from them. It's very appalling that the Devon Corporation would do this thing, and I'm sure if these two didn't Mega Evolve, this probably could have killed them. Going back to the Pokemon War, this war is where the ultimate weapon was created by AZ, the infamous towering giant who has been roaming the planet for years. Not only is he heavily referenced in the Delta episode times, while not exactly by name, he certainly is mentioned a few times by Wallace and Zinnia, who speak of a huge man who visited from a distant land. In X and Y, it is detailed that AZ created the ultimate weapon after reviving his dead Floette, which was gifted to him by his late mother. His Floette, disgusted with the idea of how ruined the world was, left him, the exposure leaving a nasty effect on him, causing him to not only live thousands of years but also his incredible height, to which then, AZ's brother hid the weapon to try and make amends and prevent it from being ever discovered. He would then go on to plant a flower in front of Cave of Origin, and would go on to witness the battle at Mega Rayquaza, Primal Groudon, and Primal Kyogre. This would then be uncovered by Lysandre in X and Y as he attempts to use it again, and while he is unsuccessful, it's absolutely terrifying that such a weapon exists, and was used to not only end a war, but also revive a Pokemon from the dead. But what's truly more terrifying is the idea of using Pokemon's life energy as a means of destruction or power. While a life was not sacrificed this time, let me bring up another quote by Mr. Stone. Thanks to the heroic actions of you young people and your Pokemon teams, we've been able to dispel the threat of the asteroid without a single loss. Perhaps I have put too much of my faith in technology's promise alone. Perhaps my belief that the sacrifice of some might be necessary to guarantee the safety of many. Perhaps it was wrong all along. Makes you wonder what would have happened if the player didn't show up. and how much blood would have been on Devon Corp's hands, Pokemon or not. It's very equivalent to the idea of sacrificing a few lives if it means that the world keeps going, and while often seen as a better good, lesser than of evils, we've seen how destructive this weapon could be in X and Y, and have heard of its effects. It'd be intriguing to know how many Pokemon's lives would cost to power such a machine, or, heck, how much life Lysandre needed in X and Y for his plan. We can only speculate.
Staying in the Hoenn region, there is something that will always watch in the deepest depths of dim caves. A Pokemon so odd, trainers flee. In the various corners of the Hoenn region are Pokemon that slumber within its depths, whether that be the powerful legendary giants of distant past, or the disciplined Makuhita and Hariyama that train vigorously. Though always, there is one Pokemon that's always watching as you enter, that is Sableye. Sableye is an odd Pokemon, with its goblin-like appearance and strange, crystallized eyes that are always fixed on anyone bold enough, or unknowingly, stumble upon its path. Though for trainers, Sableye are not too interested in them, mainly being fixated on finding gemstones or ore deposits in order to crave their cravings. For those explorers or ore hunters out there of rare stones and gems, you may want to reconsider handling this ghostly foe, as it may be impossible to push a determined Sableye away once they have their sights on their next meal. Sableye's design is based off the Hopkinsville Goblin, an incident where a group of people thought they experienced an alien encounter. The witness described the creatures that were 2 to 4 feet tall, with large pointed ears, claw-like hands, and eyes that glowed yellow, and spindly legs. A similar appearance of that of Sableye from Pokemon. Both have large pointed ears, claw-like hands, bright eyes, and spindly arms and legs. Though in Pokemon, Sableye does exist, unlike the Hopkinsville Goblin, which was not truly an alien encounter, but large greenhorn owls. Though the incident of Hopkinsville sparked a large influence on various franchises from E.T. to most depictions of aliens, Sableye in the end leaves its opponents in a scary spot, if you are of interest. So pack some repels, and do not become an aspiring treasure hunter when you go into the depths of the Hoenn region. You may just regret that simple choice. And that's a wrap for this set of spooky tales. I want to thank my friend Vannpyre who came on for this Halloween special.
Thanks for having me. I'm Vannpyre, and I'm an unvampire who streams and makes clips. You can find me on Twitch at Vannpyre and everywhere else at It's Vannpyre. I hope you liked the video and consider following me and someone's PC.
If you enjoyed this video, please go check out Vannpyre for their hard work they put into this video, and stay around on my end for some of the more interesting analysis videos. But for now, we will be signing off.